Ow, still hot. So I want to start today's video with a little bit of a preface, and assume this is for all the videos going forward, but what I talk about here are just ideas. They're concepts that I try and put into practice when I'm working with my clients, and there are frustrations that I typically see from my clients about past kitchens or past spaces they've worked in. In no way am I trying to criticize or imply that anyone else's design tastes are negative in any way. Everybody should have their own taste, and that's what makes us all unique and personal in the end. So on that note, I love when you guys leave comments. Please continue to do so. Let's keep them on the lighter side so we're not digging into each other so hard. And let's dive into today's topic, which is designing kitchen islands. Welcome back to Homestead Studios, everybody. Thanks again for joining us. And like I mentioned earlier, I want to talk about planning and designing kitchen islands for our kitchens. Everything from shape, layout, size, spacing, all the way to functionality. Now, before we get into that actual topic itself and some of the general rules I use when including a kitchen island inside a design, I want to talk about why we include islands at all. So first off, they just simply work. They're accessible from all sides, and they're ideal for a wide variety of tasks, both kitchen related and non-kitchen related. Second, they've helped the kitchen layout adjust to some of the major lifestyle changes we've undergone in the last few decades. As I mentioned a few weeks back, I think the open concept floor plan is here to stay. The kitchen is often open to other rooms now, and serves multiple roles. An island, especially if you have the space, can help accommodate multiple cooks. It can include seating areas for guests, even kids doing their homework or getting ready for school. Several of these things I just mentioned just simply weren't done in our kitchens not that long ago. And finally, they can become a focal point for our kitchen, breaking up some of the monotony of those cabinets and all the shiny appliances that we tend to include in our space now. In many ways, we can treat our kitchen islands like a do-it-all piece of furniture, where they serve multiple roles, from allowing people to congregate and socializing to providing a surface for just a bunch of different tasks, whether it's kitchen related or not. But when it comes to planning and designing an island for your kitchen, there's a few important points to keep in mind. So the first major thing to consider is, what exactly are you going to be using your island for? Now, before I dive into some of the different options, it's not one or the other, because as I said, islands are kind of a do-it-all or a catch-all and can serve a multitude of different roles. However, when it comes to planning cabinetry or planning appliances for your island, there's definitely a few things you want to keep in mind if you are planning it, say, as a prep space or a cooking space, or just like the one here behind me, just a large countertop area with some extra storage underneath and seating on the one side. Food prep should have easily accessible outlets for small appliances. And keep in mind, the exact number and spacing will fall under the National Electrical Code, so make sure to talk to a certified electrician when you're planning at this stage. Depending on the size of your kitchen island, you may even want to consider adding a secondary prep sink for washing fruits or vegetables, just so you're not always running back and forth to your main wash area. This will all more than likely lead into cleanup, so having access to garbage or recycling or compost bins directly within the island may increase your functionality or simply just make your life easier when it comes to working at your kitchen island. Now, speaking of cleanup, your main kitchen sink might even be located in the island. This means you're also going to want to leave room for a dishwasher and clearance to open the door, which we'll discuss a little bit more on later. If you don't like to leave dish towels or soap dispensers or scrub brushes out in the open, you're also going to want to consider a place to tuck these away. Just keep in mind that whatever area you choose should still allow the items to dry out, preventing them from turning musty or moldy in any way whatsoever. Depending on your kitchen layout, you might even consider using your island as a dedicated cooking space with the inclusion of a range or a cooktop. In this case, you will want to leave adequate space around the cook surface. When I'm designing, I typically like to leave a minimum of 18 inches, but more if it's possible. You will also need to consider ventilation for your cooktop, whether that is through a downdraft fan or a ceiling mounted range hood. Now, I'm not going to dive into ventilation for cooktops or ranges in this video at all, because there's a lot of specifications and a lot of intricacies when it comes to planning for ventilation, especially in how you're going to run your HVAC. Do you have enough ceiling height to add a ceiling range hood to the space? Or do you even want to add a big ceiling range hood and having that hanging above your island? These are all things that need to be considered with ventilation, and it's probably best to discuss that on a topic all on its own. So that brings me to the last point of what we like to use our islands for, and that is island seating. And as it turns out, this is much more of a controversial subject than I originally thought, because a lot of the comments in the last video said the last thing they would want is a row of seats on one side of the island, staring at them like a chef in a restaurant as they cook and prepare a meal. Regardless of your stance on this, there are a few items to consider if you do plan on including seating at your island. Countertop height and width should be designed to accommodate standard stools. For standard countertop heights, around 12 inches of overhang is about standard. However, the higher you raise your countertop and the higher your stools become, the less bend is required out of knees. Therefore, you can decrease this overhang slightly. It's also important to leave roughly 24 inches per person as a comfortable spacing between stools or chairs. Finally, you might also want to consider adding a little bit of a contoured edge profile to your countertop edges. A more rounded edge just becomes more comfortable to lean against over a long period of time. Alright, so that brings me to point number 2, which is size and spacing. And spacing, I would say, is probably one of the most important aspects of planning for a kitchen island that can be done, and should arguably be looked at first before doing anything else, because if you don't have enough space, there is no sense in going through the whole rigmarole of design and planning and cabinetry layout, because you don't have enough space in the end anyways. So really think about spacing before you dive into all of the elements I'm talking about here today. So in general, I try and make the island a minimum size of 4 feet long by 2 feet wide. If your spacing doesn't allow for this, it may not be worth forcing an island into the space at all. If you are going to be using the island for cleanup with the inclusion of a sink, the minimum should be closer to 6 feet long as opposed to 4 feet long, just to accommodate room for the dishwasher and room to spread out dirty dishes. On the top end, I guess there really is no maximum size for an island. If you've got a kitchen that'll accommodate it, I guess just keep going. I have designed some seriously large islands for clients in the past. However, when it comes to width, you aren't going to want to push the island past around 4 feet wide. This just winds up making the center of the island unreachable in a natural way. Now, it's important to remember that these are just sizing guidelines and not hard and fast rules in any way. I have definitely designed islands in the past that do not follow these exactly. However, it is a good starting point when you're planning your own kitchen island. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the more important aspect of this point is spacing around the island itself. If you are not cooking in the area, you can often get away with about 36 inches of space between your countertops. However, if you are cooking, prepping, cleaning up, or have an appliance in the area, I aim for a minimum of 40 to 42 inches of spacing. The last thing you want to do is find that your island disrupts the functionality of your kitchen, squeezes off corridors, and just makes it a pain to work in all around. So we've talked about size and spacing of our islands, we've talked about the different use cases and ways we can go about using our islands and how to plan accordingly. And now next up is talking about storage, and islands are a great way to add some additional storage into our kitchen spaces. Now there's a couple of ways you could go about planning the storage in your kitchen island. The first would be to just willy-nilly place cabinets that equal the length of the island you want and call it a day. Or you can take a little bit of time and think about the different uses you're going to use your island for and plan your cabinetry or your drawers accordingly to that specific activity. So for example, if it's for cleanup, make sure you have adequate storage for dish towels, etc. If you're using it for cooking, then storage for pots and pans or even a spice drawer should all be easily accessible. Now, one option I like to use when it comes to cooking at our kitchen islands and storage for pots and pans is 2 deep drawers with a hidden drawer inside. The 2 deep drawers are perfect for pots and pans, and the hidden drawer can be used for spices or measuring cups or commonly used cooking utensils. Now, if you're lucky enough to have enough space that you can stretch your island out to 45 or 48 inches wide, it's also worth including some shallow cabinetry on the backside or the non-kitchen side of the island. This is great extra storage for some non-everyday items or even extra pantry items like canned goods that you don't need access to every day. Taking the time to think about your storage ahead of time and what you plan to place in those cabinets or drawers will make your kitchen so much more enjoyable to work in down the line. So we've covered different use cases, size, spacing, storage, and last up on the list, lighting. I've touched on lighting in almost every video regarding kitchen design in one way or another. The key point is, where you have workspace, you need light. Although recessed lighting can often work just fine, when it comes to kitchen islands, I like to include dedicated task lighting in the form of pendants. This allows the task lighting to come directly down and spread evenly across the work surface. Pendants are also a great way to inject some character and help make the space feel unique and personal to you. Just be careful when it comes to pendants to set them at the correct height. Too high and they look odd and out of place, and they aren't really fulfilling their true function of task lighting. Too low and they're going to be directly in your face, blinding you while you work, and they're going to block a lot of the sight lines throughout your kitchen. Now, it's important to remember that this discussion revolved around stationary or fixed kitchen islands, those that are constructed from cabinetry. There is a whole other option of including a movable style island, such as a large cutting block, a kitchen cart, or even a rolling toolbox. Yes, seriously, a rolling toolbox. I'm not sure if this is a new trend, but I have had several client designs this year where we have designed the entire kitchen around an industrial rolling toolbox. Well, that about wraps up this video. As I mentioned earlier, I love hearing from all of you guys, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, so please leave a comment down below with some of your kitchen island tips or planning tricks. Heck, maybe you don't even like kitchen islands at all. I don't know. If you enjoy content like this, consider hitting that subscribe button and giving us a thumbs up, and while you're down there, click that little bell icon so you don't miss any of our future upcoming content. Again, thanks a ton for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.